doesn't mean I don't love you. 'Cause you know I do. But your eyes were right. Our love was this kind of living that's killing me. Out every night, try and drink away your memory. Maybe I'm a fool for crying. These tears over you. But your eyes were right. Our love was
folks, again welcome to the old Melbourne Tramcard 244 W2 from 1925. Heading out of Cathedral Square, your driver Ian's conducting this trip.
Hi there.
Looking, he wants to just see that you've got a ticket. If you haven't got it, you'll sell you one. I think everybody's pretty well controlled, covered. Down Worcester Street,
No, yeah, don't worry.
picture theatre down here on the left, the old Leyden, now that's big schools, Holy Grail. Down on the corner they're doing a lot of work on the Clarendon Hotel. Not quite sure what it's going to be there. We'll find out in due course. Oxford Terrace, that's the strip. All the bars and cafes along it. Nice restaurants there. On the right we've got the City Council chambers with its great free exhibition there. Up to the bridge, stop number 2, and down to the right we have punting on the Avon. 2 puntings that our company operates on the river. The other one being punting in the park. Must be the first man to the South Pole back in, well, it would have been 1911 if he'd made it. The time he got there is 1912. A Norwegian, Roald Amundsen, had beaten him to it, and Scott and his whole party didn't manage to get back to the coast. Little island upstream, now that's known as Mill Island. It was the site of the first flour mill in our city. It was back in the 1850s. It was driven by a water wheel, not that one. It's just a replica. Into Worcester Boulevard. It's the Canterbury Club there on the left. The businessman's club originally, back in the 1870s. Recently had a great deal of money spent on it to restore it. Coming up on the right, we have the gallery to Druid Road Waiwhiti. Free to enter. Open until 5 o'clock tonight. Now it's rather large, but apparently the old masters, the older part of the collection upstairs, not on display.
What is this yellow thing there?
High wire. It is
So you want me to send that picture to you?
400 and
Oh.
the name of AJ Hackett.
I'll tell walk tonight. Tomorrow was
One guy is jumping.
Set up the bungee jumps.
You guys want to do it? We'll tell tomorrow. Because tomorrow we have no rush to go back. The small ones go first. Go by size. The small ones go first.
Yeah.
Because the big ones, they stretch the rope.
Yes, I'm probably in that order too, I would think.
Go hard and shoot. Ladies first.
Yeah. A heavy glass or two of wine. Now that mountain directly in front of us there with a bit of snow on it, that's Coronet Peak. That's one of the commercial ski fields.
There's a waterfall in this chest.
You see that peak? That's where we're going to go tonight. Coronet Peak.
You must.
Just Jason,
No, you didn't see it.
Queenstown
They
there.
had the pipes up above it. It's kind of like this way. Down.
That's arguably one of the oldest commercial ski fields in New Zealand, actually. The other commercial field just near Queenstown. I come with the site of that in a moment. The second largest lake in the South Island. It's at a beautiful location. As you get to see one on the shores of a large lake. With no luggage out tomorrow morning. You just bring with you what you'll need for the day. So you will need a jacket, some good shoes, and just some layers a little bit. And so we're subject to mountainous or alpine weather conditions, but this can change at a moment's notice. So layers of clothing will be the way to go tomorrow. Yeah. Which means you can take stuff off all the stuff. Yeah, just come prepared to keep warm, especially on the jet boat, although they will give you life jackets and a splash cape. And so this is part of Lake Wakatipu. This was the Frankton Arm. This is the shallow was part of the lake, so if you want to swim, come here, because it's about 1.5 degrees warmer than the main lake, which means that the water temperature here is Cecil Peak, and the right hand one is Walter Peak. The original farmer here was William Rees, and he named the mountains after his to come back to Glenorchy on the jet boat. And then we have lunch up at all those things. So it'll be a good day tomorrow. Lots to see, lots to do. We've got part of Queenstown on the other side of the lake there. That's Kelvin Heights. That's more popular. The residential million New Zealand dollars.
Wow.
One of the golf courses is over there, the Queenstown Golf Course. Actually, golf is very popular around here. There's several golf ranges and mountains. That's the Remarkables. At least it ain't raining, eh? Nice. So that's the golf course over there in the trees on the other side of the lake. Yep, yes it does. Snow right down here in winter time. It's not all the time. It doesn't usually last for very long, but this weekend, snow right down to lake level. So this is Queenstown we're coming into. There are hotels, there are apartments all over the place. And if you look straight ahead of us almost, you'll see a pathway cut through the trees up there. That's where you're going for dinner tonight. Beautiful view. I'd like to use this coach if they need to do other transfers with. And so there is a possibility that there'll be other groups in here tonight. My advice would be to take all your stuff with you off the coach at the hotel. I hope you have a fantastic Speaks Ale House. There are restaurants and cafes and bars everywhere which way you look. 5:30 tonight. So just be in the lobby or just outside the lobby here, around about there. And we'll chat with you.
I don't know, that's why it would have been fun to watch them. See, I was in the back here. I was in the back here. This is more for a show that most of the country. I told them to Joe that I'm going to stop. And he just like it. Just went on. He wanted to go. I said, you know, these guys are in the next one. He says, I'm not taking it. He said,
Well, how are they going to get up there?
well, yeah.
That's not too bad.
I guess because people want to do things. So.
Yeah, but it's leaving to go home.
Yeah,
Lynn was there. Lynn Cool.
Making your life more.
see how easy you're in your room at least. So. The other girls, they were like shopping somewhere. Yeah, they were just expensive. This town is really expensive to find me in. That's the reason.
Looks like.
Don't wait here, go look around, you're going to come back in about 5 minutes. Go look around, take pictures, because otherwise the light will be gone. And then you'll, do whatever you want, you'll come back here in 5 minutes.
I'm going to take a picture of this.
Okay, 1, 2.
Did you see the woman down there bungee jumping? Just right. Oh, okay. I wanted to run over here and get a picture of her while she was still doing that.
No, no te estoy diciendo a ti, ma, yo no me estoy diciendo.
Sí, está durísimo. Digo, tú te pongas aquí, así como estamos acá. Y la cabeza para abajo. Corre, ya no ves.
Ahí van otras que se van a echar.
Oh yeah, see that's the thing. I don't
Oh, you were in control.
That was quick. I just had one go.
Ya, sí, te echaste, ya se fueron sus $200. Ya valió.
they got hot.
Son 121 metros, 124 metros. El que le puso el 13 negro.
Que le puso el negro.
¿Ya bloqueé el ojo?
I don't think you get wet.
Sweet like you went.
Well, that's kind of a mist.
Yeah, I don't think what kind of thing floating up. Yeah.
But I thought I was going to be walking around in sandals my entire upper part of it. You going on the boat?
Yeah, I guess. Do one or the other.
All right, Ruth, where's your parasol?
I wouldn't wear that one because then you can wear, I would wear your rain jacket.
Well, I was doing this for warmth.
So you'll need a vehicle down at the marina?
Lisa, she's probably walking into reception about now.
Thank you.
Called a braided river.
No, it was for Louise and the bed. Go ahead, Ben. Hey, girl, just let me know if the flight anchors leave the building, please. Careful there.
Nice little signpost up here on the right. Excuse me, particularly the one looking straight up the valley, one that you won't see in many places of the world. Here it is. paradise, no exit.
Oh, let's take a picture of that. That's cute.
So the road is a no exit road, so
No exit.
are we right?
We're right. Who'd want to leave paradise anyway?
No. Probably about 35 kilometres and then come a little bit back down, and that's where we'll swap over and you'll go back up the river and then all the way back.
Okay, so we are the first ones going up the river.
No, the others are going up.
Oh,
The others are going up and halfway back, and you're going up and all the way back.
Oh, I see.
So the black cattle over here on the right are Angus breed of cattle. They were introduced to New Zealand in the 1930s. Most of our Angus beef is now exported. Our biggest export market happens to be the United States, and our biggest individual customer in the States is the McDonald Corporation. So if you have a close look at the cattle, you'll probably find some of them have got yellow ear tags, some of them have got red ear tags. That's the difference between the cheeseburgers and the hamburgers. Here on the lake here is a paradise duck. You can see Mum and the little babies out there. She's giving the little ones swimming lessons at the moment. Paradise duck's unusual in the fact that they are one of only 2 breed of duck in the world that is known to sometimes nest in trees. They're also unusual in that is the female. Can't see the male at the moment, but the male has a black head and the female the white head. It's usually the male that is the brightly coloured in duck species, but the paradise is the exact opposite. The other... Yeah, has he got a yellow ear tag, has he? Yeah. Yep.
That's not a cheeseburger.
Yeah, so he only breeds the cheese up here and looked down the valley there and decided this was it, this was paradise. So he milled the timber from the hill up the back there and built Arcadia. 11 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, library, reading room, billiard room, it's got it all. When he finished, he wrote back to his father and said, "Dad, I've found paradise, I've built the house, we're ready to open, send the fiancée out." Dad wrote back and said, "I found paradise too, my son, and she's a bit of all right. In fact, your ex-fiancée is your new stepmother, and neither she or I will be coming." It's never actually opened as a guest house, has never been operated as a guest house, is currently owned by the Venter family who farm this area, and they use it purely as a family home. The only problem is all the family have left home, and in fact 10 days ago so did the wife. So Dad lives in the 11 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms all by himself. So if there's any single ladies, go for it.
How old is he?
About 65, I suppose.
That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, they're getting more and more expensive. But there are.
And the few cemeteries I saw were really small, really older tombstones, thinking that, you know, since a certain time that maybe
not really. It doesn't. Sort of a question I haven't really thought of. But
how do you bury someone here when you only have 6 inches?
Well, they just dig into the rock. The rock is.
You gotta be kidding me.
The rock is a very it's what they call schist rock, which is a very flaky type of rock.
Okay.
So it's not difficult to. I mean, you can dig it with a digger without any problem.
Oh, okay.
It's not sort of solid.
I can see taking a chisel every time. Or chisel bury someone every time.
Yeah. No, it's not like. In fact, this mountain here, which is Mount Alfred, is the only granite mountain in the whole region.
Oh.
Yeah.
So even though it is rock, roots can kind of infuse it.
Well, they tend to break it up.
Yeah.
They get in a bit and it flakes. Yeah. It flakes off. But we'll be able to show you as we're going. Okay. Fed from Mount Alfred, Mount Earnslaw, which is where, if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, where Gandalf went walking in the snow. It is the highest mountain in this region at about 6,500 feet, and is the has the most glaciers of any mountain in the southern hemisphere. There's actually 17 glaciers. The point over here on our left, you can see one of the jet boats just coming around the point there. In fact, there's two of them there, I think. Yeah. They do have to be really be able to read the river very well, and it's for that reason they have to do a little over 200 hours on the river before they're entitled to take any passengers. And, but most of the drivers, I know a couple of the drivers today are well known.
Jesus, how can I take a picture like this?
It's also interesting because it's got a very bright red berry on it in about March. You can just see the start of the berries forming there. And the Maori folks used to collect up the berries, dry them, grind them up into a powder, mix the powder with water and use it as a painkiller. So not only did they inflict the pain with the spikes here, they also cured the pain with the fruit of the Matagari tree.
Just like our pyrocanthus.
So the spikes, where do they get the color?
The colour comes from mud or from trees or
so
that
they
sort of
dip
thing.
they dip this needle.
They do the points and then they rub it over with mud or whatever the colouring they want on it.
With the red
so
berries.
this is what they use. I've seen this on television. Needles.
Yeah, very, very sharp.
Yeah.
Okay, I never lived in this area. The reason being simply that their staple food is a kumara or sweet potato, and that it just doesn't grow much further south than about Christchurch. So they used to come down here in the summer months to collect the moa, which is like a big emu, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on. Greenstone from just around the corner, Mount Cosmos. I'm sure the boat drivers will show you Mount Cosmos, known as the mother of all greenstone. About 70% of all New Zealand greenstone comes from Mount Cosmos, which is just around the corner, and of course the other side being on the west coast where most of it comes from. So when they came up here in the summer months, the men would build a frame similar to that, although probably a little bit better than that. They'd thatch it with the flax, and the women would sleep in the huts and the men would sleep in the forest, and they weren't allowed in the huts unless they were invited. When it came time to leave, they would build a boat like this, which is called a tonu. Again, built out of the flax, but the flowering part of the flax, very light, very porous, and they would load that up with whatever they'd got and float it down the river. Obviously being porous, eventually it starts to sink, so when it got to the stage where they weren't making a lot of progress, it was time to go to bed. They just pulled the boat out of the river, unloaded it, leant it up against a tree, had a sleep. When they woke up, of course, all the water had drained out and away they went again. And they did that over and over again. That takes something like this, maybe 200, 250 kilometres down the waterways until they could get their big canoes, or wakas as they're called, further up the river where they could offload and then take it back up the coast. When they were eating, they would eat or cook in a thing like this over here, which is called a hangi. It is basically underneath that is a hole full of smaller sticks. They'd set fire to those. Once all the big sticks had burnt, of course the rocks become red hot or white hot. They then put a wet mat over the top of that, lay their food on the top of that, cover it with another mat and then pile earth on top. So it became like a very big pressure cooker, if you like. Luau, yeah, very similar. Wonderfully healthy way of cooking because, of course, it's all steamed, so all the fat content is drained out of it. But the Maori folks eat a lot of fat food, but not fatty food. When you go to the North Island, I'm sure you'll be going to the Maori concert in Hangi, you'll find that they don't cut fat off anything. They eat it all, but because it's been steamed, of course the fat the actual fat content has been drained out of it. The other thing you'll notice is if there's 60 of you, you're all going together and you go to the Maori concert, and the food will come out and you'll be looking over your shoulder to see where the other 60 are. The Maoris, although they're wonderful entertainers, very hospitable people, it's a huge insult to them if you leave hungry, so they almost double cater. There'll be food for Africa. Yeah, if there's 60, they'll probably cater for 100, maybe 120, just so as you don't go home hungry. But I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time there, as I say. Very hospitable people and wonderful entertainers. You'll have a great night when you go out and dine with the Maori folk in Rotorua, which I'm sure you're doing. Okay, as we go through here, what we're going to see is basically beech trees. We have 5 different species of beech tree in New Zealand. We have 3 of them in this area. Up above the snow line, or up on the snow line, we have what we call the silver beech. Down in this area, mountain beech and red beech. And as we go through, I'll point out the differences to you. The main difference between beech trees here and beech trees in the northern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere beech trees, the Latin name is Vagus. The southern hemisphere, Notovagus. And the difference being the size of the leaves and the fact that southern hemisphere beech are an evergreen, so they don't lose their leaves in the winter. Okay, you may find as we're going through, your mouth starts to get a little bit dry. You're not coming down with some terrible New Zealand disease. It's just that also you'll notice the trees are probably 50 or 60 feet off the ground, the mountain beech, before they throw any major branches. And the reason for that gets back to the lack of topsoil again. Because there's not a lot of moisture in the topsoil, they're getting the moisture from the atmosphere above. So any branches further down are just a waste of time and using up the energy that the tree could be using to get higher and wider. And because they're taking the moisture out of the atmosphere above, humidity on ground level through here, somewhere between 12 and 20% only. So if your mouth does start to get a little bit dry, that's the reason. Okay.
The tall, yeah. He didn't want to get stuck in a bus or a boat.
Right, blame it.
He said it's probably shellfish.
Yeah.
To lash it up, or if they broke a bootlace or something like that, it was ideal for that sort of thing. It's also thought that would have kept Colonel Sanders going for a month, so kept the Maori tribes going for a month. In fact, they hunted it to extinction. But it was a vegetarian, and they think it grew these spikes simply to protect itself from being eaten by the moa. And once we get a little further on, I'll show you a more mature tree, and you'll understand a little bit more about the spikes and things and why the scientists think that it grew them to protect itself. But it's a lancewood tree.
Yeah, I went to the National Museum of History when we were in Christ.
Red beech is an unusual tree in the fact that it only seeds once every 5 years. And for a period of only eat them, can grow into a sapling maybe 6 or 8 inches high, and they can stay like that for anything up to 60 years. Root structure. And just round the other side, that's a totally separate tree again. That's what's called a 5-finger tree. Very unusual over this side of the Southern Alps, very common on the west coast. So obviously a bird or something like that has come over for a party on Saturday night and left a little deposit before it went, and it's found just enough to grow in. Because it's hollow, of course, there's plenty of places to hide for the nocturnal animals which we have in New Zealand. The worst one, of course, being the possum. You've probably seen them on the road, squashed, about the size of a pussycat. The squashed ones are the best ones because they can't do any more damage. We had a government back in the 1850s that decided we needed a fur trade. So they imported 50 of them from Australia. By the time the possums actually got here, the government had changed and the new government decided we didn't need a fur trade at all. So they released them instead of knocking them on the head, in the forests just out of Invercargill, about 200 kilometres south of us. Like most Australians that come out here, the possum thinks New Zealand's a pretty good place, simply because they've got no natural predators out here. In Australia, they've got foxes and snakes and things. Out here, apart from maybe a deer or a pig or a goat, they'd be our largest wild animal. In Australia, they breed once a year and have up to 3 offspring. In New Zealand, they're now known to be breeding 3 times a year, having up to 10 offspring at a time.
Don't they have possum day where you can go out?
Oh, they should have every day. We did get a fur... Yeah, no. Apart from Australians. We did get a bit of a fur trade going between the mid-40s and the late 80s, and in fact in 1988 we exported 3.8 million possum fur skins onto the world fur market. But 88 was when Sophia Loren started her no natural fur policy, and by 1990 we were exporting none at all. So with no bounty on the skins, and the possums doing a pretty good imitation of the rabbit as far as breeding was concerned, they currently estimate in our forests in New Zealand we have about 70 million possums. Each one of those is eating 400 grams of our forest every day. So you can imagine the damage they're doing right throughout the country.
Is there a conscious effort to get rid of them?
Yeah, there is now. The Wool Board have come to the rescue. They've developed a fabric which is basically merino wool, 60%, and possum fur, 40%. It's a wonderful fabric. Has 3 advantages over an all woolen product. The first one being it's a lot softer, very much like Angora or Cashmere. It's about 15% lighter than an all woolen product, but the most important thing, it's about 25% warmer. And the reason for that is simply that possum fur is like only one other animal fur in the world, and that's the polar bear. The fact that each strand is quite hollow, and the air trapped inside each strand of possum fur so well insulates it that if you throw a handful of possum fur into a deep freeze, it's actually impossible to freeze it solid. So if you are looking for something to take home with you, possum and merino, ideal, because you're getting something that's soft, light and very warm, and we're saving a few trees because it actually takes 38 full-grown possums to generate just 1 kilogram of possum fur. Sorry?
That's all right. Go ahead.
Take wet.
I haven't done it yet. Yeah.
You guys don't look like you're having fun. I think everybody else is having fun.
It's like a bunch of seals with red things on.
You're going to rally like you? I'm golden. Fish on this bucket.
Alright guys, big smile. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Don't let him scare you too much, eh? Take it with a grain of salt.
He's got his aggression down on you,
Hey, if you guys in the back would jump off, we could go faster. The guys in front to hold it back. Yeah. Keep it nice. Yeah. Pellets. I'm getting used to pellets and acorns. They're not out of the back.